Max Verstappen to Mercedes is no longer just a rumor, it's a scenario that could be triggered in a matter of weeks, and if it happens, George Russell could lose his seat instantly, even if he's leading the championship. Because hidden inside the contracts, there's a clause that changes everything. A clause that allows Mercedes to replace their own driver, the moment Verstappen becomes available. And right now, that moment is getting closer. Fast. Verstappen is outside the top two. The exit clause is about to activate. And behind the scenes, Mercedes has been preparing for this exact opportunity for years. This isn't speculation anymore. This is a chain reaction already in motion. One decision, that could remove Russell from Mercedes, overnight. And what you're about to hear reveals why this could be the most ruthless move Formula One has seen in decades. At first, it looked like George Russell had everything under control. He was delivering results, leading the team, proving, race after race, that Mercedes had made the right decision. From the outside, it was stability, confidence, a clear number one driver. But inside Formula One, stability is often an illusion. Because what really matters is not just performance, it's timing. And right now, the timing is working against him. Because while Russell is focusing on winning races, something much bigger is unfolding in the background. Something he cannot influence. Something no driver can control. Max Verstappen, getting closer to the market. That's the turning point. Because Russell's position doesn't collapse because of his mistakes. It collapses because of Verstappen's availability. And those are two very different things. One you can fix. The other, you can't stop. And this is where the pressure becomes real. Because Russell is doing everything right. Exactly what Mercedes asked from him. Exactly what his contract requires. And still, it might not be enough. Because inside that contract, there's a silent condition. An exception. A scenario where performance no longer guarantees security. If Verstappen becomes available, everything resets. And that's the part nobody says publicly. Because it goes against the image Formula One tries to project. That the best performer earns the seat. That results decide everything. But moments like this expose the truth. Sometimes, opportunity decides. And Verstappen is not just an opportunity. He's the opportunity. The kind that forces teams to rethink everything. Strategies, lineups, long-term plans. Because signing him doesn't just improve a car. It transforms an entire era. And Mercedes knows exactly what that means. They've lived it before. They built a dynasty around one driver. And now, they see the chance to do it again. But to do that, they need space. And space in Formula One is limited. 2 seats. No more. Antonelli represents the future. A long-term investment they are not willing to lose. Which leaves one name. Russell. And suddenly, the entire situation flips. From secure to uncertain. From leader to vulnerable. Not because of failure, but because of what's coming. And what's coming is something the entire paddock is watching closely. Because the moment Verstappen's clause activates, everything accelerates. Conversations that were quiet become urgent. Plans that were theoretical become real. Decisions that could wait must be made immediately. And that's when things get dangerous. Because in those moments, teams don't think emotionally. They think strategically. Cold, calculated, focused on one thing. Winning. And if they believe Verstappen gives them a better chance, they will act. No hesitation. No matter who it affects. And that's why Russell's situation is so fragile right now. Because he's not just racing against other drivers. He's racing against time. Against a clause. Against a decision that could already be forming behind closed doors. And here's what makes this even more intense. The silence. No official statements. No confirmations. Everything happening quietly. Which, in Formula One, usually means one thing. Something big is being prepared. Because the biggest moves in this sport don't start with announcements. They start with silence. And right now, that silence is louder than ever. But this is only the surface of the story. Because what's happening next could make this situation even more unpredictable than anyone imagined. But here's where everything takes a turn that almost nobody is prepared for. Because this is no longer just about Mercedes making a move. It's about Verstappen controlling the entire situation. And that changes the power dynamic completely. For the first time in years, he's not just the best driver on the grid. He's the most valuable decision maker in Formula One. Because every team is watching him. Waiting. Ready to react the moment he makes a choice. And that gives him something no contract can match. Leverage. Total leverage. He doesn't need to rush. He doesn't need to commit. He can wait and let the pressure build around him. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Because while Mercedes is preparing, Red Bull is trying to hold everything together, trying to convince him to stay, trying to prove that things will improve, that the car will get better, that the situation is temporary. But deep down, they know something has changed. Because Verstappen is no longer just frustrated with performance. He's frustrated with the direction of the sport itself. And that's much harder to fix. A faster car can solve results. But it doesn't bring back enjoyment. It doesn't change the feeling inside the cockpit. And that's the real problem. Because once a driver starts questioning that, the decision is no longer logical. It becomes personal. And personal decisions are unpredictable. Which is exactly why this situation is so unstable. Because Mercedes is building a plan based on availability. Red Bull is fighting to protect their future. And Verstappen is the only one who decides which path becomes real. But here's where it gets even more intense. Because the longer he waits, the more pressure builds on Russell. Every race becomes a test. Not just of performance, but of relevance. Because even if Russell keeps winning, the question doesn't go away. What happens if Verstappen becomes available? And that question changes everything. It affects confidence. It affects decisions. It affects how a driver approaches every single weekend. Because now, it's not just about beating rivals. It's about proving you are untouchable. And in Formula One, that's almost impossible. There is always someone faster. Someone better. Someone more valuable. And right now, that someone is Verstappen. So Russell is stuck in a position no driver wants to be in. Perform perfectly, and still feel replaceable. Lead the team, and still face uncertainty. Win races, and still hear the same question. What if Max arrives? And that's what makes this situation so brutal. Because there is no clear escape. No simple solution. No way to fully secure his future. Because the decision is not entirely his. It belongs to Verstappen. To Mercedes. To a moment that hasn't happened yet. But is getting closer with every race. And this is where the story reaches its most critical point. Because everything now depends on timing. If Verstappen waits too long, options disappear. If he moves too early, he risks making the wrong choice. And if Mercedes hesitates, they could lose him again. So all sides are trapped in the same tension. Waiting, watching, calculating, until something breaks. And when it does, it won't be gradual. It won't be controlled. It will be immediate. A single decision. That triggers everything else. Contracts, lineups, careers. And at the center of that explosion is one question. Not whether Verstappen will move, but when. Because the moment that answer arrives, George Russell's future at Mercedes could change forever. And just when it feels like the decision is getting closer, there's one final piece that changes everything. The moment that will decide it all. The summer break. Not just another pause in the season. Not just a few weeks without racing. This is the deadline. Because the contract clause tied to Verstappen doesn't wait until the end of the year. It doesn't wait for the championship to finish. It activates right there. Mid-season. Right when the pressure is at its highest. If he's not in the top two by that point, he's free. Free to talk. Free to negotiate. Free to leave Red Bull without restrictions. And here's what makes that moment so explosive. Everything will happen at once. No slow build. No gradual transition. One day, everything is stable. The next, the entire driver market opens. Because the second Verstappen becomes available, every top team will react. Immediately. Aggressively. But one team won't need to react. They'll already be ready. Mercedes. Because while others are watching, they've been preparing. Quiet conversations. Long-term planning. Waiting for this exact scenario to appear. And when it does, they won't hesitate. They can't. Because opportunities like this don't come twice. And this is where the final pressure hits Russell. Because by the time that clause activates, it might already be too late. Not because of his performance, but because of timing. Because if Mercedes gets even a small window to sign Verstappen, they will have to decide instantly. No time to evaluate. No time to hesitate. Just act. And in that moment, loyalty becomes secondary. Contracts become flexible. And the only thing that matters is securing the future. That's the brutal truth of Formula One. The sport doesn't wait. It moves. Fast. Decisively. And sometimes, ruthlessly. But here's the part that makes this even more intense. By the time the public finds out, the decision might already be made. Because the biggest moves in Formula One don't happen in front of cameras. They happen in silence. Behind closed doors. Weeks before anything is announced. Which means right now, while everything still looks uncertain, the outcome might already be taking shape. And Russell knows it. He feels it. Every race weekend. Every interview. Every question about his future. Because deep down, he understands something most fans are only starting to realize. This is no longer just about driving. It's about survival. Staying in the right place, at the right time, when the biggest opportunity in the sport appears. And right now, that opportunity is Max Verstappen. A driver who can change everything with one decision. A decision that will come down to one moment, one clause, one opening. And when that opening appears, there will be no second chances. No going back. Just a move that could redefine Formula One and decide, in an instant, whether George Russell remains at Mercedes or becomes the biggest name left without a seat